I'm not here for blessings.
I'm not here
Jesus,
for blessings.
You don't owe me
Jesus,
anything
you don't owe me anything
more than
anything you can do.
I just want
I just want you.
Gud är
God
inte skyldiga
does not
oss
owe us
något.
anything.
Jesus, you don't owe
Jesus,
me
you don't
anything.
owe me anything.
Som jag sa förra veckan
As I said last week, I've prayed and been thinking and asked God, what is it in this special time when things that we used to take for granted but that are now completely changed, are there other things in our lives that we can as well take for granted, and they have become truths because we say them often or we hear them often? Are there other truths that are not actually truths? And leading up to this Sunday, it was as though I could hear God whispering to me. I felt a sense of pain, God's pain, His heart, and it was as though He said to me, there are so many who believe that I owe them. People who think that I am the cause for pain and suffering and evil, COVID-19, that I don't stop things in the world, but that I also owe them to reveal myself, to show them signs that I exist. And how many times have I not heard, and maybe you have heard this too, words such as, I gave God the chance, but He did nothing for me. He didn't answer my prayer. He didn't help me when I reached out. Or the prayer, if God exists, He's welcome to reveal Himself to me, as though He owed to us to show Himself, to reveal Himself. And for those of us who believe, it's easy to compare other people's blessings with my own, and feel or think that when will my breakthrough come? When will I receive my miracle or my healing? And we can very easily adopt an attitude that God is not doing His job and that He's owing me something. I have news for you. God does not owe you anything, and He certainly doesn't owe me anything. There is a time to call out to God for blessings. Cody Carnes, he has written both blessings and nothing else. And there is a time to call out to God for blessings and to seek the blessings and promises. But we must not have the attitude that God owes us something. There is a time to call out to God for breakthrough, and I like preaching about it, and I like to do it often, but not with the attitude that God owes me a breakthrough. And there's a time to call out to God for promises, but not with the attitude that He owes it to us to fulfill those promises in our time, but in His time. There is also time to call out to God and to tell mountains to throw themselves into the sea, but if that doesn't happen today, it doesn't mean that God owes me something. There's also a time, and that's what I'm going to preach on today, when we don't ask for anything, when our problems can be put to the side, the wounds and mistakes from yesterday can become silent for a time, and the needs for tomorrow can be forgotten, because I'm not here for the blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything. I just want you. More than anything you can do, I just want you. More than anything you can do, all I want is you. God does not owe us anything. And I'm not saying that sounding stuck up or to sound hard or cold, but I say that because we need a balance in our view of God and accept that God is holy, He's almighty, He is complete just in who He is. And we need to value his presence in our lives much more than anything else that he can do for us. Let me give you an example, just to highlight what it is that I mean. It's very easy for us to end up in a place where we expect God or feel that he owes us to do things. In Matthew 12, the Pharisees say to Jesus, "We want to see a sign." It's the attitude that if you are the Son of God, we want you to prove it to us. You owe it to us to prove who you are. And it's incredible that they ask the man who they have just been discussing with, in whose name he is driving out demons. Now they're asking him for a sign. They've seen him do signs and wonders, and they still say, we want to see a sign. You owe it to us to show us who you are. And he answers them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." God does not owe it to us to show us a sign. He does not owe it to us to show himself in a way that we think that he should, because he already has. If we think that God owes it to us to do anything more than to become human, to give his life for us, be in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights and then rise again, then I honestly don't know what that could be. What else could God do than that sign? And then Jesus continues in verse 41, "The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here." God says to Jonah, in Nineveh, the people are evil. It's as though that they want to do bad things. You have to go there and tell them that this is enough. I'm not going to tolerate this. And Jonah goes there and they repent. They don't ask for any signs. They don't ask for a writing on the wall. They listen to Jonah and repent. And it says that they will judge that generation who would not believe. And in verse 32, yes, "The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here." The queen of the south was Queen Sheba. She came to see Solomon because she had heard of him, and she listened to his wisdom. And Jesus says that she will be part of judging you, because she listened, they listened to Solomon, listened to Jonah, but here is something much greater. "Here am I," Jesus says. And then he shows them by giving his life for us. And my question is, was it enough, Jesus' work on the cross? Or do we need anything else? Do we need anything else? When Jesus dies on the cross, he exclaims, "It is accomplished." Everything is finished. The sin that stood between man and God has been taken away. It's actually the case that God does not owe us anything. We owe him, we are forever indebted to him, but God is not interested in us feeling guilty or feeling like we owe him something. God is, I would go as far as to say that God is almost not interested in us being grateful. What he's interested in is getting to know you and me. And he loves giving us things. He loves spoiling us. He loves it when we call out for breakthrough or mountains to be moved or health. He loves it. But more than anything, he loves when we want to spend time with him, just for who he is, just to experience his presence, and for him to experience ours. That we don't live our lives where we feel that God owes us anything. Citykyrkan, he wrote a story to explain why God seldomly do what we want or reveal himself to us in a way that we feel that he owes it to us to do. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, like so many other stories beginning with once upon a time, there was a prince who was single. He was keen to get married with a beautiful girl who would become queen. Close to the palace, there was a city. And often, when he went down to the city to take care of business for his father, he often traveled into the town, and one day, to reach a certain businessman, he had to go through the poorest, dirtiest part of the town. And he just happened to look out into the misery through the window on the cart, and he looked straight into the eyes of a beautiful, poor girl who lived in the slums. Over the next couple of days, he had the opportunity to go through this part of town again, and he was taken up by the beauty of this girl, and he had a hope to once again look into her beautiful eyes. But more than that, he had the joy to actually meet her. But soon, he began to feel that there was a problem. He was in love with this girl, but how could he ask her to marry him? He could of course order her to come to the palace and when she arrived suggest marriage, but even a prince wants to experience the feeling that the girl who he's going to marry wholeheartedly wants to marry him. Or he could come to her in his gleaming uniform, in royal robes, with the royal orchestra parading through the streets, asking for her hand in marriage. But even a prince wants to marry out of love, and not because of power, title, or riches. A third alternative springs to mind. I could disguise myself as a poor farmer and make her fall in love with me, and then afterwards reveal to her who I am. But it felt fake to be something he wasn't. And lastly, he found a solution. In his mind, the solution had a very high price. He decided to give up his royalty. He gave up his title, all of the advantages, all his servants and the money, and I'll move into her neighborhood. He would begin to work as perhaps a carpenter, and during his work and his spare time in the evenings, he would get to know the people, begin to share their interests, their concerns, learn the language, and in due time he would get to know this girl in a natural way, and he would win her love in the same way that he already loved her, and then he would ask for her hand in marriage. I love this story because Jesus had exactly the same problem with you and me. He saw us, he fell in love with us, and he wanted our love, but he wanted it to be free and voluntary. He could have ordered us to love him, but it wouldn't be out of free will. He could have just appeared in his royalty, royal robes, in his honor and might, parading with angels and cherubims. But that's not how to win someone's love, with power or title or riches. He, our Master, wanted our love without blinding us or overwhelming us with his holiness and his beauty. writes in Philippians 2 verse 6, reading from the Message, he had equal status with God, but didn't think so much of himself that he had to cling to the advantages of that status no matter what. Not at all. When the time came, he set aside the privileges of deity, on the status of a slave, just like the prince in our story, and he became human. Like you and me, Jesus met us at our level, so that we out of free will could respond to his love. He doesn't owe us anything. He came and he became a slave. He became a human. The question is for you and for me, if I can join in with these words today. I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. More than anything you can do, I just want you. Amen.
More than anything you can do, I just want you. Amen.